Hi, I'm Steve, and it's time to start saving the world. Now, I can't think of many animals that were around in North America 10,000 years ago that still exist today. But that perfectly describes the California. Now, I recently took a trip to California with my family to go see my cousin perform in the Rose Bowl parade. You should go watch that if you haven't yet. Vlogged the whole thing. And while we were there, we went to the San Diego Zoo. And the San Diego Zoo has California condors, and as soon as I saw them, I just fell in love with them. But I already knew some of their story. I had recently read part of a book by Jane Goodall that she wrote about the California condors, and some of you may remember this beauty from my Kakapo video, and the California condors are also in here. So I knew a bit about them before we got there, but when we saw them, the exhibit design was all Ice Age themed, and it was just very cool, and I had to commemorate the moment. You know, just seeing them in person, I took lots of pictures, taking video. It was just, I had to take a moment. And I also bought this at the zoo. It's a little itty-bitty stuffed California condor, and I just thought, you know, this is a perfect way to just commemorate this wonderful memory that now exists in my mind. But what's the California condor's story? How did they survive the Ice Age? And what almost killed them 8,000 years later? California condors are huge birds with big appetites, and during the Ice Age they would feed on the carcasses of mammoths and giant ground sloths and bison all across North America and Mexico. But as the Ice Age ended and the megafauna went extinct, and humans arrived in the area, California condors couldn't survive in most of their historic range anymore. Their food sources were disappearing, and humans weren't necessarily helping. As European settlers moved west, they hunted and captured and poisoned and took the eggs of the California condors, and they hunted the bison and the elk that they ate on and lowered their population even more. And by the 1900s, the California condors could only survive in mountain ranges in Southern California. While hunting California condors has been illegal for almost 100 years, lead poisoning was and still is a major issue for the birds today. They've been a federally protected species since 1967, but by the 1970s only a few dozen remained in the wild, so major conservation efforts began in 1980. Eggs were taken and hatched and raised at the Los Angeles and San Diego Zoo. Some were captured for a breeding population, but there just weren't enough to survive in the wild. At one point there were only 22 left in the world. And in 1987, the last condors were captured from the wild, and at that time their population was only 27 birds. It was a difficult decision to make, but if those last California condors wouldn't have been captured, they would have died in the wild. Hatchlings were raised at the zoos and breeding sites with hand puppets that looked like very realistic California condor heads so that the chicks wouldn't imprint on humans so that they could be released back into the wild. The first releases started in late 1993, and since then, the population, as of 2018, the total population is 488 birds, with about 312 of them flying in the wild. But lead poisoning and capture still remains a major issue, as well as flying into power lines and being electrocuted. There's a lot of problems still out there. Conservation efforts continue today. Birds are still raised and released, and they're kept track of through like radio devices that I truly can't fully understand, but the conservationists know, and the fight is far from over, which is why I think you should donate. I donated, or at least spread the word and share the story of the California condor. It's one of the most wildly successful conservation efforts that went from just 27 birds to now almost 500 birds. But the fight is still not over. There's still lead poisoning and electrocution, all these problems that they still face in the wild. Meanwhile, the breeding programs still need the funds and help to breed and raise and continue to release these birds. But for right now, the population is generally on a very slow rise, but a rise nonetheless. Things are looking pretty good for the California condor, and it was so great to see them in person, and I saw them actually flying a little bit, really up close. It was just a great moment, but Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Make someone smile today. I hope you smile today. Bye!